Hello everybody, my name is Michael Wright. I'm a canine behaviourist. I had done a few videos on here a while ago, but I stumbled into a few problems with Twitch, so I gave it a bit of a break. So I've been using YouTube. However, my son assures me this is the way to do it, so I'm going to have another little go. So today I'm not going to spend too much time wittering on, but I want to talk a little bit about the little lady behind me. That's Ziggy. Ziggy was a rescue dog, our fifth rescue dog, and I've talked about her in the past, and I've talked a lot about rescue dogs. She was a delightful creature. We got her when she was 3 years of age, and she'd not had a terribly good start to life, and she had a few issues, which most of our dogs do, that we've rescued over the years, and we've helped, and I take great pleasure in doing that, actually. And that's one of the things that got me into retraining and becoming a behaviourist. I like to help people and obviously their dogs. So Ziggy had been going along quite nicely, but then at the turn of this year she became a little bit quiet, and over the space of a few weeks she started to lose weight, and she was off of food. Now, for Sue, my wife, and I, we've been around dogs for a long time, and I've been around the medical world for a long time, so I knew in my gut that there was something wrong with Ziggy. So we tried changing her food and all sorts of things. But we finally got a vet who actually agreed to do an ultrasound so we could have a little look, see what was going on, if anything. So unfortunately the news was bad. Ziggy had a large growth right next to her liver, and that was all they could see on the ultrasound. There was probably more that wasn't visible. So now we had a number of options. Ziggy was 9. She'd been with us for 6 years, 6 very good years, and we had to make the decision what was best for Ziggy. Now, unfortunately, the medical options that were available were not good, well, certainly not from my perspective or my wife's perspective. They entailed doing surgery, biopsies, chemotherapy, and with a prognosis that was less than good, let's say. So the question I always ask myself when considering a dog's welfare is, first of all, what are the chances of a good outcome? And for Ziggy, they weren't good, unfortunately. Not only that, I'm also a great believer that, for instance, in the medical world, if I go to a doctor and they say to me, well, Mr. Wright, it's not good, you've got a growth and it's a cancer, and we're going to have to do this, that, or whatever to it. Now, I, as a human, I understand that, so I can make an informed decision, and I can understand what's happening to me if I go down a certain route. Now, of course, the dog doesn't have the same benefit of that. They don't understand why they're feeling awful, why the humans are doing this to them. And I kind of think it's a fairly cruel thing to do, really, in some circumstances. If there's a good chance of actually your dog recovering and having the most important thing, which is a good quality of life, then I guess you try to do that. But in Ziggy's case, the prognosis wasn't good, so we made a decision to let her go, which is always a very difficult thing. I'm 64 years of age now, and I've been in the Royal Navy, where I've seen a lot of death and suffering, as a lot of my ex-colleagues have. And I've been in the medical world for many years after leaving the Navy, before I decided to retrain and do what I do now. So I'm well versed with death and dying and suffering, but I just don't believe we should put our dogs through it if we can possibly help it. So we let Ziggy go. In fact, Ziggy's in our garden. She's in a plant with a flower and some forget me not posies. So she's still around. So then it comes down to the human that's left. How do we deal with losing one of our family members? People tend to treat dogs as children. A lot of people do. I don't agree with that. They're a sentient being. They have feelings. They live with us. They share their lives with us, and they give us an awful lot. And I think actually they give us far more than we give them. So how do I deal with that? Well, I have a fairly pragmatic view. When I heard what we would have to do with Ziggy, I blubbered like a baby. 64-year man, and I blubber like it. It's the only time I ever cry in my life, to be honest with you, is when my dogs die. However, I then don't spend months and months grieving. I tend to reflect upon any dog that I've lost, and there's been a few over the years. And I think, and I'd recommend most people do this actually, I think about the life your dog had with you. And Ziggy's life, when she came to us, she hadn't had a very good start. She had some serious issues that we worked on and we dealt with. But the 6 years, well, she's about 6.5 years actually. The 6.5 years she was with us, she had a fabulous time. She got to do things. She had extended family. She had my mother-in-law and my father-in-law who loved dogs. My son and his family who loved dogs. She got to go out every day and have adventures. She learnt to live and swim in the water. Never seen water. Wouldn't put a paw in it when I first got her. But after a little bit of gentle coaxing, she loved it. So she swam in rivers with me. She swam in the sea. She had a fantastic time. She got in lots of trouble. She rolled in nasty things. She chased me around the house. She attacked me at regular interviews. Intervals. It was a bit like living with Kato from the Pink Panther movies. She would relish in finding any opportunity to get me cornered or attack me. She'd encourage me to let her out to play a killing dog in the garden. Out she'd go. She didn't really want to go out in the garden, and then she'd about turn, come back in, and then she'd immediately attack me. So we'd have to have a rough and tumble and a bit of a snarl and a fight. And she did that the whole of her life, and she did that until she passed, really. She had a few idiosyncrasies. When she got a bit tired and a little bit crotchety, she'd grumble at you under her breath, and basically just telling us, "Could you just leave me alone now and stop stroking me? I'd like to have my head on your lap, but I'd like to go to sleep." So we adjusted our lifestyle to suit some of Ziggy's requirements, which I think is a lovely thing to do. So we miss her hugely, of course. She's been gone now. Well, time just passes too quickly. She's been gone now probably 2 months or so. So in the meantime, it's hard to have a home without the patter of a dog's feet and their mess and their presence. People that don't have dogs probably struggle to understand that, but if you've had dogs for most of your lives, and I have, and same with Sue, except for my time in the Royal Navy, a home doesn't quite feel right. And in fact, many people know me from when I walk with Ziggy, and they said to me on quite a few occasions, it didn't feel right that I didn't have a dog. So we rather like the idea of rehoming a retired police dog that's done its time, now needs a new home, or a police dog that maybe has failed its training and not quite up to scratch. So because Sue works with police with mental health issues through their job, she has some contacts in the local police force, and we were able to get ourselves put on a list for people who want to take dogs as I've just described, the retired police dogs. Then in a very short period of time, Sue got an email saying, would you be interested in any of these dogs? And these dogs were involved in a big case, and they still were, and they needed fosters. So we took one of these dogs, and this dog came to us. I can't say too much about him, but he didn't have a name, he just had a number. And because of that, I love a good Western, so he's a dog with no name, so we called him Clint. And he's been with us probably for a month or so. Now, of course, you never forget your dogs. They all live in my memory, and I think about them regularly throughout a day, all of them. But it's nice to give another dog a good home. I think Ziggy would approve. Now, another thing that kind of helps, and I think Sue put this across to me. Sue's a mindfulness expert, specialist. So she reads lots and lots of things. A bit deep for me. I'm a simple man. But she studied a little bit of, she's not a Buddhist, but she studied some of their philosophy, and it's very interesting. Now there's this thing in Buddhism called the Bardo. And when Sue said this, I said, what do you mean the Bardo? The Bardo is basically a period of time in the Buddha's belief where the soul, if you want to call it the soul, let's say call it the soul. I'm not a religious person, but let's call it the soul of a creature or a living being that's passed and has died, remains. And they believe in reincarnation. And that's too heavy a subject to go into, but they believe in that. And they believe that over the Bardo, which is a very set period, it's I think Sue said it's 49 days. And during that 49 days, the spirit of the creature that's passed can move over rapid distances and often visits its home. And the idea from a Buddhist belief is that they visit their past home before they move on, because they want to check that their stuff is there, make sure that their family's okay, that sort of thing. That's kind of a nice way of thinking about it, really. So during the Bardo, what Buddhists believe is you keep the past things there. So we kept Ziggy's bed, we kept her food bowls and her water and her cover on my bed that she'd sleep on, all those sorts of things. And in fact, I'd fill the food bowl, and I did it for about 49 days. Now, that sounds absolutely insane, doesn't it? It sounds absolutely insane. But actually, and I'm not, as I say, I'm not a spiritual type person. I'm definitely not religious. It's quite a nice way of thinking about it. And in fact, I thought about the Bardo a little bit. I'd heard that before. And I couldn't think where. I certainly hadn't heard it through reading any writings or teachings from Buddhists. But then it crossed my mind. It came into my mind. I'm a great Bowie fan. And I think Ziggy's previous owner was also a Bowie fan. She had 2 different coloured eyes. Therefore, she was called Ziggy. Very fitting, I thought, so we kept that. But the Bardo, when I heard it, it was, of course, in a Bowie song. And it was actually from the 70s. And Bowie's album, Hunky Dory, one of my favourite albums, there's a track in it called Quicksand. And it talks about the next Bardo. So I thought it was very fitting. So it's quite a nice way of thinking about it. Now, my YouTube channel is misbehaving, but I put together a little video, which I've just shared in the chat. Oh, hang on. Bear with me. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, there it is. It's worth a watch. It's basically a musical tribute to Ziggy, and it shows her enjoying her life, which is pretty much all you can do for a dog. So it shows her just doing everything that I think a dog should be able to do. So she, if I can use the term, she got the full Monty. She got affection, she got peace and quiet, she got exercise, she had fun. She was allowed to get into a little bit of trouble and all those sorts of things. Just a fantastic thing. Just a fantastic thing. And that's basically what I've done for every single dog. And I know most people do the same thing. So I don't want to ramble on too much, but if I expand on the quality of life for a dog, anybody that's heard me whittling away, they've heard various of my comments about certain things we do or don't do for our dogs. Now, I'm a great believer in a dog should be allowed to be a dog and live a dog's life. And when I mean a dog's life, they need to be socialized properly with people, with animals, with everything. They need to have as much fun in their life as you can possibly pack into them, because unfortunately they don't live as long as us. So while they're with us, make it something to remember, really. So it saddens me a little bit when I see some people and what they do with their dogs. And they're not doing it through any malice, but often through ignorance and not really understanding. I'll give you a couple examples. Clint, the guy we're looking after at the moment, he's a lurcher. Now lurchers are bred by travelling communities in the gypsy community, or historically they have been, and they still are. They're often bred for hair coursing, so chasing small furry things, catching them and killing them. So many people that take on a lurcher, or indeed a greyhound, or any such dog, they either never let them off the lead, or they muzzle them, and they don't really give them the opportunity to be a dog. These guys can get up to about 40 plus miles an hour in the blink. So you can't be reckless how you deal with them. But however, I'm an enormous believer that if you can train a dog to do something, you can train it to do something else. So instead of keeping Clint on the lead, he has a muzzle on, and the muzzle's there for his safety and other dogs' safety. This guy's got a fantastic temperament, by the way. I'd love to show you a picture of him, but I can't quite do that at the moment. So he gets to run on the beach with me off the lead with his muzzle on. He gets to run in the forests off lead with his muzzle on. When we meet small dogs, he's on the lead and we introduce him, and then I gauge how he's doing. And if he's fine, he's allowed off the lead to socialise, run around and play. He's a work in progress, but he's doing fantastically well. And people often say, well, my dog's recall is awful, so I've got to keep him on the lead. And when you explain to them that actually, guys, you can train virtually any dog. There's always exceptions, but virtually any dog you can train to recall. You can train to recall them to your voice. You can train them to recall to a signal, and you can train them to recall to a whistle. And the only thing to remember, of course, is it takes effort. And there's no magic red button here. It takes effort, so you have to persist with it, and it's worth it. I think we actually owe it to our dogs. I'll give you another example of that, and this is an example of people taking bad advice, and then the poor dog is then suffering from the bad advice. So, in fact, I'll give you two examples. I met a lady in the forest a couple of days back. I had Clint with me, and it was a young, I think the border terrier. Well, not young, he's about 9 years of age. And this lady had him for a good few years, and he was never off the lead. And I said, have you not thought about just getting his, which his recall's not very good, he'll run into the forest. And I said, well, have you not thought of doing some proper training with him so he can, well, he jumps up at people and I said, okay. So have you done anything? Oh, yes. I've taken lots of advice over the years, she said. Lots of advice. And in fact, the last piece of advice I got from an expert. And the expert, excuse me, gave me the advice over the phone. And the expert's advice over the phone was to say, how old is this dog? The dog was over 2 years of age. Oh, well, if the dog's over 2 years of age, you can't change it. You've got no chance. So you just have to keep it on the lead. And that's what she's done ever since. I stopped and thought for a second, because when people hear this, they need some help, And I said, show me the dog jumping. This dog came up and jumped up at me, and I said, okay. And I stopped the dog jumping in under a minute. Very simple thing to do. And this lady looked at me as if I was some sort of a magician. I said, well, I'm not. I said, but I know how to do this, and you only know what you know. And when I told her, look, nearly every dog I've rescued has been a lot older than 2. Some of them have been 8 or 9. And have I been able to train them and change their behaviour and teach them recall and teach them the basic things we want all our dogs to do? The answer, of course, is yes. Now, some of them have been harder work than others, but they've all been able to change. So the old adage, you can't teach an old